out of your friends, which are you? Truck freak crazy ass. The fighter.
Now, a concept I really wish Metroid can expand and touch upon more often is the idea of bounty hunters, space hunters. That's Samus's whole gimmick. She is a bounty hunter out there doing missions and jobs for people who hire her, but yet we rarely see Samus ever compete with other people for bounties and missions, or interact with other bounty hunters. Which is why when games like Metroid Prime Hunters and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption introduce us to other space hunters out there, it becomes a memorable event as you learn about different characters with different origins, different designs, different abilities, with their own motives on why they're helping or hindering Samus in her adventure. With 9 hunters introduced to the franchise, I wanted to make a video talking about my favorite bounty hunters in the franchise, but since there's only 9, might as well talk about all of them and rank them from my least to most favorite. Now of course, this is purely opinion based. I'm not going to be talking about like objectively who's the best or who statistically would be the better hunter or stuff like that. Nothing in the competitive or meta of hunters, just my opinion, talking about their origins, their abilities, their design, and what I like in these characters. So if you have your own opinions, your own lists, if you want to argue or agree with the order I place these characters, feel free to tell me. We all have our own opinions and I'll love to read them. And also, if you like Metroid content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel as it'll help me out a lot. And without further ado, let's get started. Now, I don't really want to harp on Gendrada too much, cause she is a pretty capable bounty hunter, being able to mimic things like Berserker Lords, Demolition Troopers, Gore, run to Samus herself, shows she's pretty capable at stealth and recon, as well as being great with acrobatic combat and morphing weapons of her body. She's easily one of the galaxy's most deadliest hunters, but her personality just rubs me the wrong way.
Space Pirate Grey is definitely not my style. Machines aren't my thing either, so I'll let you get this generator back online. Thanks, Sammy.
Gendrada, at least try to help me get the satellite working. I guess scans imply that she is still pretty young, so it would explain some of her childish demeanor, and in any other scenario, I wouldn't mind a more cheeky personality to bounce off Samus and some of the more serious characters. But with the situation in Prime 3 being pretty severe with the whole fate of the entire galaxy at stake, I would kinda want everyone involved to take the situation a bit more seriously. But maybe Gendrada is just quirky and that's why she's so relaxed during the whole situation. Although something neat I do like about Gendrada is that I love how her rivalry with Samus to be the better hunter kinda got twisted into a weird bloody grudge to kill and decapitate Samus for Dark Samus after being corrupted. I don't know if this implies that secretly Gendrada never liked Samus, or maybe just the corruption twisted her mentality to the very extreme, but whatever the case may be, that's pretty neat. On a little side note, I never understood why people said Gendrada was hot in any capacity, cause yeah, that's not a pretty face right there. That's ugh. Is it because she can shapeshift? Because if that's the case, I get it. It's terrible. Cut that joke out. That's stupid. Now sometimes I do forget Nexus exists, and that's kind of a sad thing to say. Now don't get me wrong, I love his cool rounded design, and his infinity weapon, the Judicator, is amazing. A ricocheting shotgun that basically freezes enemies? That is so cool, and I've cheesed a couple matches using that freezing side effect as Nexus. My main issue with him though is that he's kind of bland. Nexus comes from a race of monk-like aliens, with his goals as a bounty hunter to fight crime to ensure a balance of good and evil in the galaxy. That's not really a bad backstory, but it's kind of redundant because his main reason to get the ultimate power during Hunters is to prevent anyone bad from getting their hands on it, which is basically what Samus is doing. Maybe if Nexus had a more twisted perspective, like using the ultimate power to purge all evil or something extreme like that, then he would be pretty interesting. But since he's monastic, he seems to be very level-headed and understands that there needs to be a balance of good and evil, so his overall motives are just kinda bland. Also, his morphball ability, the Scythe, is kinda dumb. It's essentially just a spinning top with blades, and I've died so many times using the Scythe because I'm just basically spitting towards opponents, leaving myself open, and getting killed immediately. It's dumb, it's lame, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I put Nexus pretty low on my list. Now, when it comes to looking at backstory alone, Spire is one of my favorite bounty hunters. The last member of his species, Spire becomes a bounty hunter to find the answers of his missing people. He wants to use the ultimate power to help him find out the fate of the Diamants. He seems pretty aggressive and aggro, but he's actually just a gentle giant. It's noble, but also sad, and I want to see Spire's story continue so much. I love Spire as a character, but god do I hate playing as him. His affinity weapon, the Magmal, lobs molten explosives with splash damage, as well as giving enemies a burning effect. Overall, I don't really like lobbing projectiles, and Spire can actually hurt himself with his own weapon if he's too close to it. So I've actually killed myself many times trying to use the Magmal. His ult form, the dial launch, isn't any better. In fact, it's pretty lame. It has a cheap knockoff spider ball effect, which should be cool in concept, but since it cannot scale down walls, up ceilings, or even over ledges, it is severely limited in its ability to traverse through the map. And apparently, I didn't even know this, but there's like a cool momentum effect that lets you travel faster if you gain enough momentum, which I never even knew existed, and with the map layout, I never really had enough space to even find that out in the first place, so I couldn't even use it if I even wanted to. But I guess his appearance in the intro kinda shows off that momentum ability, I guess. I guess his immunity to lava is pretty cool. I think there's only like one map that actually has lava, and I do remember being able to camp and hide inside the lava, but that's like the only cool thing, you know, being able to hide in the one map that has lava. I love Spire's story so much, but I genuinely hate playing as the character. Also, as a little bit of a fun fact, apparently Spire was supposed to have the power bomb as his morph ball ability bomb, but was cut out for whatever reason. Which is cool to learn, but also sad to know, because that would have been something cool to see Spire use, the power bomb, but he doesn't use it, so oh well. Now, low-key, I'm a slight sucker for seemingly emotionless and cold characters actually being pretty friendly, and Gore is actually the best example of this. A bounty hunter who's had at least 94% of his body replaced with robotics and cybernetics due to the battle damage he received from being on an actual war on Wotan 7. And you would assume with him being in a war and him having to replace his body with cybernetics, would it make him more cold, heartless, and hardened. But Gore is surprisingly one of the most kind space hunters in the galaxy, taking jobs for free and even giving the bounty reward to the victims of the hunted because he's just that nice of a guy. Being able to keep his humanity, well, not humanity, he's obviously an alien. I guess compassion's a better word. Being able to keep his compassion despite his condition is a true testament to his character, until he combines with his battle suit. Then things get very aggressive real quick. Being 94% tech, Gore can simulate various forms of technology, which makes him very good for hacking and recon missions. But the more tech he absorbs, the more aggressive he gets, especially when he absorbs his battle suit, which actually doubles as a spaceship, which I didn't even know. It greatly increases his strength compared to his more scrawny body, but he becomes much more ruthless. The whole Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde twist Gore has with his power suit really makes him stand out, and I would love to see more of this character. Oh wait, we can't see more of this character. Ugh, forgot about that actually. Now, until relatively recently, I didn't know too much about Caden's backstory. I knew he came from a sinister laboratory, which means he was some sort of science experiments, but anything more than that was just unknown to me. So learning that he was actually part of an experiment to create super soldiers, and the fact that Caden not only was a successful experiment, but also invincible, was extremely shocking to me. Although his mind couldn't handle the programming, and it caused Caden to be unstable. Having a fractured mind, Caden killed off all the scientists, destroyed the laboratory, and now roams the galaxy to, I guess, prove he is the ultimate weapon. That is pretty cool, although it's also a huge bummer that since this is Metroid Prime Hunters with very limited character interactions and no dialogue, there is no opportunity to really show off Caden's more unstable side of his character, so that's kinda lame. Although despite his backstory, the main reason I like Caden a lot is because I have a lot of nostalgia with the character. Caden was one of the few characters you didn't need to unlock for Hunters multiplayer, and since he was yellow, he was the first character I decided to play as because in the 6th grade, yellow was my my favorite color, and Caden was yellow, so it kind of worked out. Caden's affinity weapon, the Volt Driver, was basically a slower wave beam, but the fact that it blinded enemies by messing with their visors was very helpful for me to able to actually get a couple more seconds to aim another shot or to run away. And I love Caden's morph ball form, the Sting Larva. Being a little wormy squirmy wormy boy, he just slithers around the map. When he morph bomb jumps, he actually goes pretty high, and I like the little animation of the worm just arcing over the air, so that's pretty cool. And his Sting Larva bombs actually home in on enemies, meaning I can spam these guys out a lot and not having to worry about placing them properly and timing out the explosions. And also I love the sound effect of Caden morphing into the Sting Larva, so that's another reason to add to the list. If it wasn't for the fact that Caden's mentality and unstable mind wasn't really shown off in game, I probably would have put Caden a lot higher. I love Caden a lot because he was the first character I learned how to play properly in Hunters. I just wish the game at least attempted to show off Caden being unstable or broken in some capacity. Now I can confidently say that Solx is one of the, if not the most favorite space hunter within the community, and for good reason. He is a mysterious bounty hunter with origins, motives, and identity unknown. All we really know about this character is that he has a spiteful vendetta against the Galactic Federation, and specifically Samus, as he stalks her throughout the games, waiting for the perfect time to strike. It's so cool, it's so mysterious, it's so intriguing. Wielding experimental Galactic Federation armor and technology, Solx could be a huge threat to Samus when he finally decides to actually get his revenge. His affinity weapon, the Shock Coil, literally shoots electricity at his opponents, and with this weapon, Solx can actually siphon health from his opponent to heal himself, which is pretty cool, being able to heal yourself within a match. His alt form, the Lockjaw, is actually the most interesting thing about him, to be honest, basically turning him into a ball of energy with a metal frame around him, and this has some pretty interesting implications that I'm actually more intrigued about. Is this stolen Chozo technology? Is this the Galactic Federation kind of getting inspired by the Chozos and maybe trying to be more spiritual with their tech? Does Solx even have an organic body? That's a lot of cool implications with this alt form. But low-key, I do think he is a bit overrated. I mean, yeah, I get it, the character's mysterious and that's his general appeal and all that sort of stuff, but if you appear in 3 games, I would like a little bit more substance when it comes to the character's origins or story or something. But it does seem like they're building up for something in Prime 4, so hopefully we'll get an expansion on his character in that game. Although, because I mentioned Solx not having a known identity, I know someone's gonna bring up the fact that maybe he might be Solomon Aran. No, Solomon Aran is not Solx. Samus never had a brother. Blood of the Chozos is not canon. I know, it's a cool theory. I actually do like it a lot. But the evidence used for that theory is not canon. But that's a whole different can of worms. Now, people go off about how Solx's hatred towards Samus is cool and all that, but Weevil hates Samus too, and he has a legit reason for this. It's never been stated when, but Weevil and Samus actually fought on Brinstar a long time ago, and of course, Weevil lost the fight, resulting in him being on the brink of death. The Space Pirates, however, were able to recover his broken body and rebuilt him up as a cyborg. I like to think that the experiments and procedures done on Weevil to turn him into a cyborg is the same exact experiments done to Ridley to turn him into Meta Ridley. Now, Weevil does bounty hunting missions for the Space Pirates as a cyborg bounty hunter. It's hella sick. Although his affinity weapon, the Battle Hammer, is kinda meh for me. Again, I don't like lobbing projectiles, but at least the weapon's shockwave effect pushes opponents pretty far, so that's pretty cool. But Weevil's alt form is why he is so great. Sacrificing some bit of HP, Weevil can separate his body into 2 parts. The bottom part turning into an actual turret that uses the Battle Hammer as its main form of weaponry. You know how OP it is to have an auto-aiming turret in a game where people are using a touchscreen to aim? It is so cool to dominate matches with this alt form alone. Although, it is slightly cheap, but who cares? It's freaking Weevil. He's a space pirate. That's kind of his whole shtick. Being honorable, he's a space pirate. Regardless though, this is my opinion, but based on his backstory, I feel like Weevil would have been a better choice to focus on than Solx. The whole idea of stalking your opponent and setting things up for like a penultimate encounter for revenge just feels like it fits better with Weevil with his whole backstory. It seems like he would have a better reason for wanting revenge for what Samus has done to him with breaking his body and forcing him to become a cyborg. Now, I know it's obvious why Trace is high on my list, but before I talk about that, I want to talk about his backstory. Coming from the Credit Empire, Trace was exiled from his empire to search for planets for his empire to invade as a rite of passage, and seeks the ultimate power to be seen as a hero to his people. It's amazing, first of all, to see a faction out there that isn't just either Space Pirates or Galactic Federation. I'll love it if Metroid as a whole explored different factions out there, and I weirdly sympathize Trace for his motives. Sure, his empire is kinda evil, they're, you know, an empire and all that, but he wants to be seen as worthy for his empire, to be seen as a hero to his people. It's kinda sweet, and I kinda want to root for him a bit. Also, I love his sharp design, it's super cool. But now, let's talk about the obvious reason for why he's so high on my list. His affinity weapon, the Imperialist, is a sniping weapon. Now, normally, sniping weapons require immense skill to use, but with Trace's ability of literally turning invisible when he has his specific weapon, it becomes super easy to abuse the sniping weapon. The amount of times I've camped in super obscure and excluded areas, just sitting there waiting for the perfect time to strike at an opponent with a headshot, instantly killing them and racking up the points as I stay hidden and wait them out as they waste their time looking for me. It is super fun and super cool, and I love how the invisibility ability carries over to Trace's ult form, the Triskelion. Now normally I would think the Triskelion morph ability is kinda lame because there's no bombs or weaponry, just a lunging attack, and it looks a little scary because it kinda reminds me of a spider. But the fact that you can also turn invisible with this ult form makes it super easy to run away if someone eventually finds out where you've been sniping the whole time. Being able to abuse the Imperialist with invisibility is just so great, and I've won so many matches with this. Although the DS touchscreen is a bit finicky when it comes to precisely aiming your sniper shots, so it does get kind of annoying every once in a while, but meh, get good. And now for some honorable mentions. There isn't really any honorable mentions. All the hunters introduced into the franchise are literally in this list. There's only 9 hunters out there. I mean, I guess there's some in the comics, but those aren't really canon. I remember one of them being like a side hopper or Dazagiga, so that's a wacky hunter right there. Oh, Samus! Of course, she's not on this list because that's kind of unfair. But I guess I'll put Samus above for sure Solx and Weevil. Maybe above Trace? Yeah, I guess above Trace. Put her number 2 if this was a top 10. And that's about it. Now, there is so much I can talk about why I love Rundus. For starters, I love his personality. We don't get a lot of it in game, but the bits we see, it's pretty cool. A nice, calm, and laid-back personality with a nice dry sense of humor, which I personally love the most about him. The small quips here and there that he says is nice, but being slightly arrogant because of how skilled he is as a bounty hunter really resonated with me. Rundus' ice abilities, being able to form and create different ice structures, form an ice armor around him, freeze enemies solid, and even surf in the air with his ice abilities is such a cool thing to see. And the fact that he comes from a species of aliens who don't really use their ice abilities for combat shows that he's pretty adaptable. And I would love to see more space hunters out there use unique alien abilities as opposed to relying on tech and armor. And personally, I feel like Rundus was the most helpful for Samus when it came to defending Norian from the space pirate invasion. Gore was able to take down a Berserker Lord for Samus. Gandrada, I guess, technically helped, but ultimately left Samus to her own devices. But Rundus destroying multiple space pirate ships and saving Samus from near death as she fell down a reactor shaft really made me love this character a lot more. He's such a great character, but all that alone isn't really the main reason why he's on my list. The biggest reason is because of his corruption. It's sad and it hurts for me to say this, but I like the idea of Rundus getting corrupted and dying on us. Now, for sure, if there was a chance, if there was a possibility to save Rundus from corruption and from death, I would have taken that chance in a heartbeat. But for a storytelling reason, seeing Rundus' corruption as he turns evil and rogue on Samus really hurt me in a good way. If a character as great as Rundus can be corrupted and turned evil, then it really shows to us the player, as well as Samus, the severity of her situation. She herself is also corrupted, and this could be her fate if she's not careful of her adventure throughout the game. And having to fight and take down a character I quickly loved really set the tone for corruption being a much more darker and more heartless game. I didn't really feel anything too special taking down Gore and taking down Gandrada. Low-key, I kinda thought she deserved it, but if I felt this bad and this broken, but also this engaged taking down Rundus, it really shows how quickly I really grew connected to this character, and that's why he's in the top of my list as the best bounty hunter in my eyes. But that's how I would rank these characters. Of course, it's not objective based, a lot of this is mostly opinion, although objectively speaking, Rundus has got to be number 1, I swear. But what I want to know is what you guys think, like what's your guys' opinions over your favorite and least favorite hunters? With 9 different characters, a possible list order would be pretty cool to see amongst the comment section. And if you have any opinions or suggestions for future videos, feel free to tell me. And if you like Metroid content, please feel free to check up on the video above. It's a video where we talk about Samus's gunships, talking about the changes throughout the games and explaining why they changed throughout the games, as well as talking about the ship's features and abilities and all that sort of stuff. It's a cool, informative video about Samus's gunship, which I don't feel like gets talked about enough. Or if you're interested in something a little bit more creative, how about checking up this video right here, Poketroid, where I talk about Metroid bosses and aliens and mash them together with RPG elements and mechanics from Pokemon. It's pretty wacky and niche, but I think you'll enjoy it if you like Metroid. With that being said though, I'm the Metroid Trainer. I really hope you like, favorite, and even subscribe to this channel, because I'll be catching you later.